What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday for a discussion about the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry. I'm one of your hosts today, Alex Van Aken, and today I'm joined by Marcus Stewart. How you doing, Marcus?
Doing good. Happy belated Mother's Day to all the mamas out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mamas, mommies, whichever one you identify as.
Love them all.
Love them all.
Wes, what's going on? Wesley LeBlanc, how you doing?
Hello. I'm doing great. Been busy, but yeah, I also just want to give a shout out to the moms and mamas and mommies out there. Very important.
Yeah.
Keep the world running.
Hell yeah. And rounding us out today, Kyle Hilliard. How you doing, Kyle?
Well, now I'm gonna look like a jerk if I don't shout out all the mamas, mommies, and
No, I was following on Instagram. It looked like y'all did a bunch of cool stuff. Got some cool. I saw some cool cocktail photos of cool cocktails.
Yeah, I made
stuff.
a bunch of cocktails. I made a nice dinner.
That's awesome. Hell yeah. Well, welcome to the show, everybody. Up front, if you are a fan of the show and you haven't yet, please go and get a print magazine subscription. That limited time offer for $19.91 for 10 issues a year is still valid. It will eventually be phasing out, but we do want to, get people in. So if you've been sitting on it and you want to get it now and you sign up, that really does support us in an immense way. Subscribe at GameInformer.com. Again, $19.91 for 10 issues. That was the year we were founded, by the way, 1991. And if you sign up now, your first issue will be Hades 2, delivered to your mailbox. You also get digital access, which is out now, so you can read the entire magazine digitally while you wait for the print to come, if you so choose. All that's included in the subscription. We really appreciate it. Helps us out a lot.
Yeah. How wild is it that Game Informer is the same age as Nirvana's Nevermind?
Yeah, it's also the same age as me. I was born in 1991.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They handed you an issue of Game Informer right when you came out.
I know. I think Game Informer is a couple months older than me.
Right.
I'm trying to remember when the Sonic issue came out. I think it was the summertime, and my birthday
I
is
think
November.
it was like every 3 months at that point. There was like a weird period of time where it wasn't like a monthly magazine.
Yeah, well, it's still not monthly.
Now it's not again. So,
yeah. But 10 issues a year. It's about every 5 or 6 weeks we drop one. But yeah, appreciate all that support, everybody. Let's dive in. We're going to have a big focus. This past week, May 9th in particular, was a massive day for game releases, particularly non-AAA game releases, your indies, your double A's. I've really gotten away from the indie game label and really gone for non-AAA. I think it's way clearer.
Quadruple A's.
Yeah, quadruple A's.
Or just a bunch of lowercase a's.
Yeah, I don't like
too
that.
lazy to put your score into the arcade leaderboard.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I think that's really, I like that, Alex, because it's like, that is the thing. It's like indie has become a term to describe like small, artistic, interesting games, but sometimes they're published by major publishers.
Yeah.
But they still, so non AAA games is a.
I'm starting a movement
perfect,
here,
but it's it's good.
We're getting
the way
there.
That we want to non AAA games, and also just we're dropping roguelike and roguelite.
Oh,
we're
are
just
we?
calling them rogue games. That's what we're doing. We're
doing it?
dropping the like and the light. That's
I think
what
the
we're
rogue community will love that.
All right. You hear that, gaming community? No one can call it those things anymore because Game Informer said it.
I'm trying.
Yeah, I guess we could just call them roguelikes.
No, because that's
light.
still
Just give it a
means
light.
one.
I mean,
or the other.
I'm a person who likes to be correct about when I'm citing a roguelite, it's a game that has progression mechanics involved, and when I'm talking about a roguelike, it's permadeath and no forward progression in between runs. But I'm down with just calling them roguelikes. I think it's easier. But you're saying you want to call them rogues, which is the name of a video game.
I know, but we call Metroids. Like we can call rogues.
Souls. These are Souls.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe you're right. Souls game, rogue game.
Yeah.
Yeah, Soulsborne versus Souls-like. Okay, I can kind of see.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll get there one day. Today is not that day, though. We are talking about non-AAA games. Let's start off with Animal Well, which we had Charlie Wackles on last week, who's the freelance journalist who reviewed that game for us. Gave it a great score. I think he gave it a 9 out of 10. which I agree with now that I've beaten the game. There is a lot of like post game stuff you can do, but I have beaten the main objective, and had a blast with that game. Really enamored me. I was texting with former Game Informer video editor and former GI Show host Alex Stadnick, and he was telling me that he hasn't, played through a game as quickly as he did that since his GI days. How he just couldn't put it down. And I was like, yeah, me too. Like, I think at this point, like, people know I'm really bad at finishing games. As the video editor, you're pulled in so many different directions all the time. I don't get the luxury of sitting down and reviewing a game very often and seeing it from start to finish. I also have just bad ADHD. I love multiplayer games. So when a game can really sit there and capture me for a whole weekend and just from front to back, it means like it's really connected with me in a big way. And that's exactly what happened to Animal Well. I think the every room is a puzzle pretty much. And if it's not a puzzle, it's you're on your way to a puzzle, right? Or you're interacting with these animals. We talked about the wiener dog last week. I've come across a kangaroo that's terrifying. The goose,
ostrich?
the ostrich. Sorry,
what's that term called where you do something earlier than you're supposed to in a video game?
Oh, sequence break.
I think I sequence broke something with that ostrich, but I was still, because it like flung me all the way to the other side of the map before I was done with that area. And I had to like work my way all the way back down there because I like opened a gate earlier than I think I should have. But at the same time, I think the game,
it compensates for it.
I went to the developer and I was like, hey, you can sequence break here. I think they would have been like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
like,
I was streaming my game to some friends in Discord who had already beaten the game. And I guess very early on, I also sequence broke something.
Yeah.
But the game accounts for it and compensates.
I don't think the game.
Yeah. I
but
feel
it
like
feels like it.
design.
Yeah.
Because I had that too, where I was like, the game is more open than I thought it would be for a Metroidvania. Like, you're not really running into like hard locked doors. Or I mean, you are, but like not in the sense.
Not as often.
Yeah, not as often. Like, I was surprised at how much I could explore to the point where it actually gave me a little bit, not anxiety, but like confused me a bit of like, I felt like I was losing the thread because I was like, oh, I'm here and I think I should be working on this, but oh, this is open too. What's in here? I'm just going to see.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, this is something different. Now I'm doing this thing instead of what I thought I was doing before. And then by the time I hit something, I was like, oh, I've like unlocked a quarter of the map somehow.
I don't even want to spoil what the objective is because I think it's something, the game kind of starts out like very ambiguous and you're kind of just like trying to survive and you're slowly like, yeah, I'm exploring more, but what's the objective here? Eventually you kind of just have a realization. I'll give you a hint. Look at your mini map, look for some stuff on there. And eventually you'll see some things that you're like, "Oh, what is that? Maybe I should go check that out." And that's kind of like where things start to click and come together for the game. And at that point I felt like once I discovered the objective of the game, which I do think is like, I think it is part of like the satisfaction of playing the game. Once you figure that out, you really start to cruise. Don't get me wrong, it's still very challenging, but you have that forward momentum and direction, and it's really rewarding to go back to places that you had explored, but finding, oh, there's a little nook here, and oh wow, I went in this, and now there's a whole new area. Just because I had learned, oh, there's these little hidden blocks here. I remember falling through one of those in another area and like going through a little tunnel. And oh, there's one here on this side of the map. And oh, now I'm in a room that's completely pitch black. And what's happening? And yeah, I think it really feels animal-like in that way. Like I imagine that's how like a rabbit hole works or something, where like you'll dig down and eventually there's a cave or something like that animals get to and can explore. I'm not a caver. I never will be, but I felt like I had that.
If you're listening.
No, I'm not a rabbit either.
Yeah. If you're watching the video.
I am rabid for this game, let me tell you, but yeah, it's a really, really satisfying loop. And honestly, from front to back, I think it's just excellent. I would maybe even go higher than a 9. I know it's not hitting as high for you, Kyle. I know you are enjoying it, but maybe not
I
to the extent.
I don't want to imply that like I would probably be in that 9 zone too. It was one of those games where I don't know, maybe you guys have, Marcus, I'm curious your thoughts so far, where like I finished Prince of Persia somewhat recently. I took that game real slow and I finished it and I was like, that was a fantastic Metroidvania. I don't know if I have another one of these in me this year, you know? And I started up Animal Well, and I was like, all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, there's no world where I don't finish this. You know? Like even though I was like unsure going into it, I really, really liked it a lot. It'll probably be in my top 10 at the end of the year for sure.
Yeah, it's in my top 3 right now.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm still getting. So I played a good bit of it this weekend. I have not finished it. I don't even know if I'm halfway. I think this game's probably a little hard to gauge that just because of how potentially open-ended or like sequence breaky, quote unquote, it
I would
is.
say look at your inventory and you can kind of gauge how far you are.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was going to say because I do have several things I won't say. I do have some of the things that we mentioned last week. So if you listened last week, then you maybe have some idea. But it's weird because I enjoy the game so far, but it wasn't until after I put in maybe like 3-4 hours or so that it started to click. And I don't think I'm still not quite at that like over the moon for it phase yet, but it's like inching there. Like I'm on the roller coaster going up to the top now that things are starting to click, and I found some things where I'm like, and I've made little discoveries about like, oh, I can use this not just in the way that it's intended to be used, but I can use this in another way that you only really discover from like experimenting of I mean, this isn't a spoiler because we talked about it last week, but like the bubbles. Like, okay, I know how to use these from like a basic level, but then even then there's ways you can use them depending on how you sit on them or what you use them to interact with. It's like, oh, I can actually, okay, I didn't realize that I could do it this way, which opens up some other areas that I, have been to before. Now I want to go back and apply that new lesson I learned with these. And now that I'm starting to see the, like, I guess for lack of a better term, the Tunic comparisons that we were talking about last week, where it's like, okay, like you've always had these at your disposal. You just have to sort of like either discover them on your own or that you get to a situation where the game sort of like nudges you towards using that in a certain way. And that's where the game's starting to sing for me more, outside of just the general, like, being enamored with like the art direction and the music and just how weird everything is. I did the I assumed this was the wiener dog sequence you guys were alluding to last week, but I think I did that. And it
was a small thing, like it's not a big thing.
But I was honestly thinking like it might be one of the most effective, like, I guess it's like chase sequences I've done in a while, where I was like not terrified, but it is unnerving. It is like it's scarier than it probably should be because of like, if you look at it on space, you're like, really? But it's like, no. Once you start going and you kind of, and just the stakes involved too, especially if you haven't saved in a while, then you're like, oh my God, I gotta go. Like, there's something just very unsettling about like what's going on there. And there's a good fake out to if you encounter the other dogs before that one, where you it sets up an expectation of like, they can't do this, and then this wiener dog can do something that the other ones can't. I'm talking vague on purpose. And you're like, okay, no, I wasn't ready for that. I thought you were like the other ones, and I don't like that you can do this. It looks weird, and it's just like, I just don't like it. So I did really like that section, but I'm enjoying it more and more, and now like I know I'm hooked now because when I finished playing last night, I kind of had to force myself to stop. I didn't want to stop. I just like, I should stop because I need to get ready for bed and do.
I was up till like 3 a.m. On like Friday night, and I was like, I have to go to bed. I have plans in the morning, and I was in the last area, and I will say you can gauge your progress in the game. Pretty much, there's like you're getting new items up until the very end of the game, so. Yeah. It's a pretty good way to judge your progress, your inventory space. Have you gone through, Marcus? I'm really going to talk vague here because it's my favorite moment of the game, I think. Have you gone through anything that you would describe as like a gauntlet? Really like a test of your mettle?
I mean, I feel like there's multiple areas that are kind of like that. So it's...
There would be one that you would be like, That was a thing I had to overcome. Okay, you haven't gotten there.
I use one.
So there's
here. Cover your ears, Marcus. Take off your headphones for a second.
okay.
And everybody listening, take it off for a second.
Yeah.
All right.
Is it, you're talking about? Is it related to a ghost?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Marcus.
You're
Headphones
good.
back on. All right.
You're good.
I didn't know if that might. I didn't. That's probably not spoilery. I don't think.
I solved that, Kyle, in a way that nobody else in my friend group, multiple people, had solved it. Because I think you might have gone the long way, didn't you?
Probably. Yeah. Well, we could talk. I'll message you afterward. I want to hear more about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I did it in a different way, and it blew people's minds, and I was very happy that the game.
See, I wanted to ask you guys, when you said obstacle course, this was a self-inflicted obstacle course that it turns out you didn't need to do, but like when you get the disc for the first time, what happens after that?
It's related to that.
It's similar.
Okay, so I was again being vague, and this is really only going to make sense for people that have played the game. So I apologize.
But it's
gotta pay attention.
it's not that though, Marcus.
Okay, but I was just going to say like that is like an example of like something where it seems like I'm supposed to do one thing, and maybe you could. I was trying to brute force my way through that for a long time, and I got very far before I did what you're actually supposed to do there in terms of avoiding death.
Yeah,
like,
you have to message me.
I was going for like probably like miles, like multiple rooms, being like, is this still going? Like, what do they want from me here? And you're just like, I'm like, how am I still like? And I would practice the runs of like, okay, like I've been through these rooms, I know the route, and then triggering that event, and then being very mad when I failed again and having to do it all over again until I decided to go another way. And
revisit this for after you beat the game, Marcus.
Yeah, I want to know, but I'm gonna. Keep
it might be the part I'm talking about, but yeah, okay. The games has so many moments. I think when we're doing like best moment of the year at the end of the year, there's going to be some from Animal Well that I bring up, I think.
Oh, the wiener dog thing I already have on my personal list.
Yeah.
So to bring up at the end of the year. I was going to say we should probably do like a spoiled video on this game.
I would like that. Yeah. It'd be fun. I know we've talked a lot about Animal Well. Do you guys want to?
It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. I do think it's more exploration. I mean, it's a lot of exploration and puzzle solving, and I love it for that. I love puzzles. I know Charles made a joke the other day that maybe I shouldn't play puzzle games because I got a 2.5 GPA in college, but that was unrelated. That was because I didn't realize I was signed up for a class, y'all. It was a whole thing, and it tanked my GPA. But I got through this game just fine.
Wait till I'll let you talk about Lorelai and the laser eyes a little bit later in the episode here.
Yeah,
those are only for 4.0 students.
Wes, you've been playing Hades, not Hades 2. You've been playing Hades, and I want to hear what you think because everyone's talking about the sequel, but you're kind of you. For context, Wes played the game when it came out, but didn't finish it, right? And so you've now completed a run.
Yes, I did. Last night, I finally completed my first fight against Hades. I played it on Switch when it came out.
This is legally required. Everyone has to do this. Did you take a screenshot of your completion screen?
He did.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Good. All right.
Yeah, it's on.
Sure.
It's on Twitter and everything. Yeah. I'm like 4 years
Thank God.
late,
Thank
I
God.
was gonna say, like, people are like, "That's not Hades 2."
It actually, the game Hades 2, when you boot it up, requires you to copy a link to your Twitter to the post to verify that you've shared that. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on how well you did, whether you get to play it or not.
Yeah, you'll get cosmetic rewards based on if you post it on Twitter and all that.
Yeah, I played on Switch when it came out in 2020, and I made it to like the third boss in the game, Theseus and the bull whose name I'm blanking on, Asterius maybe. Yeah, I did not see them on Switch, so I know I only got as far as that realm, Elysium, back then, and I tried to pick it back up once we knew we were doing Hades 2 as a cover story because I just wanted to play some Hades and figured I'd get in tune with it now that the early access was coming out. And on Switch, it just was not working for me anymore because the loading kind of sucked, and I decided I just wanted to play it elsewhere. And my friend had a PS5 copy, booted it up, and immediately I was like, yeah, this is where I'm playing this game. 120 frames, 4K, runs spectacularally. The loading is instantaneous. I'm sorry, Switch, but...
listen, I beat it on Switch. Skill issue, you know?
Yeah, apparently. And yeah,
the Switch is not skilled enough to run that game.
I was playing Stellar Blade and Hades at the same time, and my plan was to mostly focus on Stellar Blade and just do like a couple runs of Hades. And for perhaps unsurprisingly to anyone who has played Hades, that did not work out. I have not touched Stellar Blade in like a week. I cannot put Hades down. It's what I play on my lunch break. It's what I'm playing when I get off lunch. Even like after my wife goes to sleep a little earlier than me because she gets up earlier, so she's in bed at like 11. And usually I'll like get into bed as well and maybe read or something. But I'm like, all right, good night. I'm gonna keep playing some more Hades, and then it's like 1 a.m. and I'm suffering the next day because of it. Yeah, I wish more people would have told me about this game. More people should have.
Yeah, man. How good,
you know, how good Hades was. I'm so glad they're making a sequel. I'm so glad.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're probably playing it in more ideal circumstances than we did, because at least you don't have the backdrop of the pandemic to worry about.
That's true.
Yeah. I'll go outside and play Hades. Back then, it was like, well, I'm going to do another run because what else is there in this world?
Right.
That's what my world is right now, though. It's just Hades runs. Like, whatever's happening outside, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, if you throw out all the toilet paper in your house, you'll have simulated what it was like being in early COVID with Hades.
I do remember those days.
Make sure you're playing on the toilet with gas station toilet paper. And you
Single
will
ply,
have sandpaper nearly.
It's basically notebook paper in a roll.
Yeah. And then at 7 p.m., if you're playing around 7 p.m., have somebody bang on a pot and pan or howl outside. That's our community that did that.
Really?
I don't know if y'all,
where you live in.
They did it for like service workers at like 7 or 8 p.m. There's some people would howl like a wolf.
Wes and I live in Florida, where we historically cared less about lockdown.
Yeah, you all didn't observe the pandemic. Yeah, it was just a normal day.
Nice meal at a restaurant.
Y'all were at the beach.
You're not too far off.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find this pandemic people talked about around these parts in Florida. Like,
I was a server at the time, so I can confirm firsthand that we were open.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Fun times in Florida.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hades it's as good as everyone says it is, even though I knew it was and I knew it would be. It's probably somehow better. Like, I feel like a lot of Hades talk about the first game, like post the game's initial release, is really just like about how hot everyone is in the game, which they are. Because like once you've played the game, that's one of your memories, is the narrative and the characters and stuff. So I knew going into that stuff would be good, but the gameplay is like, it's truly sublime. I'll spend my first run where I beat Hades yesterday was like a 43-minute run, and I immediately just started a new one because, one, I needed to find out what happens next in the story because it's a very good hook they have at the end there, and two, 45 minutes in Hades does not feel like 45 minutes in any other game I play. Like, I really don't feel that time go by at all. In fact, when I saw that it took me 45 minutes to beat him, I was like, oh, I thought this was like a 20-minute run for sure. It's just, yeah, and the depth of it is astounding, and I can't even imagine. Like, I'm so excited for Hades 2, just to see what this team who made, at least so far, what I would call pretty much like a perfect Rogue, just Rogue. I guess that's what we're going with now. Yep.
Rogue
like
game.
Rogue
game, I think.
Rogue game, yeah. How they expand on this, and I've read like our cover story, and I've seen our coverage and stuff, but like I can't wait to dig into Hades 2 to see what they did with the formula of Hades 1, because I don't even really know how to improve on it. I don't really have any issues other than like some of these bosses really piss me off. Theseus, he's always talking, talking his crap to me while I'm fighting, and he
wait though, man.
The skill check.
Just wait.
Yeah.
There is a lot of skill checks in Hades too.
I've heard.
Wes, I want to give you permission. I know everybody wants you to unlock the true ending by beating Hades 10 times. What if I told you could just watch it on YouTube and then start Hades 2 tonight?
What the heck is this YouTube? What?
I'm just saying, man. It's real good over here in Hades 2 land, and I want you to be involved.
I'm gonna be the angel on your shoulder to Alex's devil. Okay. There's no rush to get through Hades 1. Hades 2 is going to be an early access.
That is true. That is very
the rest
true.
Of the year. Like, it's not going 1.0
That's true.
2025
Ignore me.
minimum.
Ignore what I said. I'm sorry. I was wrong.
I was like, take your time, Wes. And there's so much good stuff in Hades 1.
Let me get my guitar out for my formal apology.
You know, not even just the main story, but all the like interstitial stuff and the characters that you haven't met yet in your first run that you're gonna.
There's so much allure left. Like, obviously the Pact of Punishments, I think, and the heat stuff. Right now, I'm only having to mess with like turning my heat up to 1, but it seems like that can go up to really high.
Or even,
which I'm scared of.
Even just seeing how the bosses change over time.
That is true.
The first time Meg wasn't Meg and it was one of her sisters, like, I should have known because I knew that she had sisters and she talks about it, and that's like Greek lore. But like when it was someone else, I was like, oh shoot. And then the Hydra changes, and it has like the different colored horns to tell you which one you're dealing with. Theseus and the Minotaur have not changed yet, and I hope they don't, because they're still like the skill check. I think they're harder than Hades, himself. Like
you're not alone in that. I agree with that.
I thought I reached them too early when I was fighting them, because the first time I got there, I'm like hitting them and their health bar's barely moving, and I'm like, I must have gotten really lucky. Like, I'm not supposed to be here yet. I'm not seeing any changes happen. And it's still kind of like that, to be honest. They are still the one I struggle with most. Yeah. But yeah, there's chambers in the main hub area that I haven't unlocked yet. They're still locked. Mm-hmm. There's still characters I got to give gifts to get their little trinket things. There's just so much. I just discovered in the mirror you can like swap what the ability is.
The mirror
to upgrade those. Yeah. It just keeps going. Like I don't know. And I love watching myself fall in love with different parts of it in real time. Like, I didn't like the sword immediately. It's a weapon I stayed away from. And of course, the first time I beat Hades was with the sword. I didn't think I would like the gun, because that feels especially made for PC players, perhaps. Mostly because to reload, you got to take your thumb and hit R3 to reload, which is taking your thumb off the buttons, which means you're not dashing. I don't know how you guys play Hades, but I am getting arthritis in my thumb because I keep hitting that square or X button to dash so often.
You're playing on it? What are you playing on? You said
PlayStation.
PlayStation. Okay.
Yeah. No, my strategy is very much I'm nonstop dashing. Whatever boons I can get to inflict damage.
I'm basically pressing X and square at the same time.
Yeah.
That was my whole strategy.
Dash strike.
I was a big shield user.
The shield was an early contender for my favorite, but has fallen from graces lately. I've lost my touch with the shield. I'm just not good with it anymore. I think because I am too. I need to stop spamming as much. I get a little spammy with dashing around and hitting enemies, and I realize, especially fighting Hades, who really skill checks you on that, that I'm not really paying attention to moves, and I'm just kind of darting around and hoping I don't get hit. That doesn't work against him, so I'm kind of having to reshape my strategy, and I think I'll be better with the sword and other weapons because of that. The gun, I really am enjoying the gun because it really forces you to not dash around everywhere because you want to unload that whole clip into someone. But it's really cool watching myself be like, oh, I don't like this. This is not a good weapon. I don't think I'm going to jive with this. And then fast forward a couple runs later, and I'm like, please give me this weapon again. Please let me use this weapon again. Give me the 20% shadow darkness boon thing. I'm pretty enamored with Hades. It's a great game. Believe it or not. 4 years later, I've finally arrived.
I've heard. I believe. I'm really excited to hear that you've been playing it and enjoying it. Because you never know. I mean, that was it's 4 years ago. You never know how if you've hyped it up too much. If you're kind of looking back with rose-tinted vision, but I'm glad that it's resonating with you. I'm excited to hear how you enjoy. I want to hear back about after you beat subsequent runs.
I'm excited
we'll get back together about Hades. We'll get back together about Animal Well.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, we're gonna go to you now. You've been playing Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. You alluded to it a little while ago. You've been playing it. It's a tough puzzle game. 4.0 GPA apparently. Skill
honor
check.
students only.
Honor students only. Okay, well, dang. Yeah, let me know what you're thinking about it. I know I've heard a little buzz about it. I know the folks at the Indie Informer. I heard them chatting about it, but I don't know much at all about it.
Yeah, I went in a little blind too. I knew it was the Sayonara Wild Hearts team.
Oh, okay, yeah,
which is a game I quite like. It's actually it's a rare. I reviewed it for IGN, which was like a funky sort of weird bubble in my
career
here. And it's not like that game. It is not a rhythm music game. It's the thing that I almost like closest sort of emotion wise related to is The Witness, in the sense that it's like it's not as ambiguous as The Witness, although it is very ambiguous, right? Like it is very weird and ambiguous and opaque, but there is at least like a story here of like you show up at a mansion and you're like searching this mansion to find somebody. But the thing that it reminds me of with The Witness is like everywhere you go is like a puzzle, right? Like every door is a puzzle and they're all kind of similar, right? Like if you think of The Witness, it was all based around this like sliding like something through a maze and a symbol. I don't remember The Witness very well. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is a little bit like that in terms of just like straight arithmetic. Like everything is based around like simple math in an interesting way, and sometimes that's like you have to do a little bit of math to figure out what year would be the right combination to enter this lock, right?
Sure.
And so it's like it's never like super complicated math, but like that's the core of the puzzle, and it's like really it's engaging in a way that I like kind of caught me off guard, because I was like, it looks cool. It's got this cool noir sort of black and white style, and you're this woman just sort of walking around in this cool area, and just like the fact that like every direction you go is like a puzzle, and most of them you can solve then and there. Right, at least initially. I know that further in it's going to be more like, oh, you got to find this thing over here to enter it over here. But like one thing is like I got this document that was like it was like 7 or 8 pages of like architect notes, and like every page was different and had a different architect's name on the corner. And then throughout the house, the way you find maps are like you'll find a canister with that architect's name on it, and then you have to flip to that page. And like one was like, oh, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. One was like I had to like match images in a way. One was like I had to basically like not literally play Tetris, but look at an image that was like, how would you get these Tetramino like pieces in here?
Sure.
And then there are numbers corresponding though to each of those, and you kind of have to add those numbers together. It's never like crazy math, and in fact early on you actually find a calculator in the game, so like if you don't even want to pull out your phone and use your calculator, you can actually use the in-game calculator, which is kind of nice. But I'm using my phone. That's just a lot easier. But yeah, I've only played like an hour. It was very much like this morning we were planning the podcast, and I was like, well, we're going to record in a couple hours. Let me play a little bit of Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. And it's one that I'm like, dang it, I got to put this down to go back to my normal review.
Normal stuff, yeah.
That like we'll talk about next week, I'm sure. But I was very quickly enamored with it, like just because it's like I like the puzzles, and I like the root of the puzzles is like simple math in a way that's very understandable and like rewarding. I feel very smart playing this game. I feel like I have a 4.0 GPA, when in reality I probably had like a 2.9 or something.
Sure, yeah.
By the time you beat the game, you're going to get offered a scholarship.
Hand that to my daughter. Does it work that way?
We can hope. Yeah.
How do you feel about the story?
It's vague, right? It's not as vague as The Witness, but it is very strange, and I don't quite know what's happening in a way that I'm intrigued by. Okay. Like I thought I was a detective, but she's actually more of like a screenwriter who's like sort of
those are very
hired.
Different things.
Yeah, she's like been hired to like come to this house, and there's this guy that shows up sometimes and who speaks like, I don't know what is the Spanglish equivalent for French, where it's like every other couple of word.
Frenchless?
Yeah,
Franglish.
French,
Like he speaks French every couple of words. Maybe,
West
Cajun. Cajun.
Cajun. Okay, there we go. And at least I think it's French. I'm gonna look like a real idiot. I'm gonna look like a real 2.0 GPA here if he's speaking.
Yeah,
some other language.
It wasn't language studies that you.
Yeah, yeah. But he'll just like show up sometimes and just offer me cryptic clues, and then it'll give me a list of questions I can ask him, and I ask one, right? It's like, well, I'll do the first one, then I can go do all the other ones, and it's always like, nope, that's all you get. Maybe you'll see him again later, and then I get like a different set of questions. So it's like weird stuff like that, where it's like it's really weird and strange, and the cinematography of these like scenes where he talks or like the camera will just kind of like, it'll be like still images of like his mouth down to his like stomach, and like you'll see his hands move, like you never see his face. It's all very dreamlike and strange in a fun way that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I do.
Well, cool. Marcus, how have you been enjoying that game? Because you made me aware of it, I think.
Oh, I haven't played it yet.
Oh, well, you put it on my radar. I thought.
Oh, I've been following it. Like I've been very interested in it because I did like Sayonara Wild Hearts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Kyle has our only code, but I'm looking forward to trying it eventually. Yeah.
It should be it by the time you're listening to this podcast, it should be out.
Okay.
May 16th on most platforms.
And
yeah, it's really cool.
And how long is it? Would you say?
I don't know.
They didn't give you like an estimate on the email or anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe.
I know like some folks have started doing that. It's very helpful.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Yeah.
But I mean, just knowing that it's that crew, like the animations and stuff in Sayonara, so cool. It's definitely like when I'm looking up screenshots of it now, it's definitely not what I would picture from them. I think like I can definitely see like their fingerprint on like the character designs, like just like body dimension proportions and stuff like that does look like, okay, like similar art in that way, but everything else is like, it almost reminds me of like the lighting reminds me of like the contrast present in like a No More Heroes. I know it's, honestly, do you know what I mean?
There is a little Suda energy.
Okay.
Or not. Yeah. Suda.
Yeah.
I would have to remind myself that it wasn't sometimes. It's very shown, almost like a weird Killer 7, like
absolutely.
Spiritual successor or something.
And there is also, which is a Suda thing, maybe to a lesser degree, but there's this undercurrent of like the game is subtly about the making of the game as well. Like I went to a door once and there were people arguing about whether the game should just be called Lorelei or if they should add laser eyes to the title. Like I was just sort of overhearing it through the door. And it's like, it's not called out in a big way, but there's just little things that are like, the game is also about the game itself while you're solving these puzzles and trying to figure out what's going on.
I wonder if it's like a sports story thing or a intentional thing. Because sports story, the devs like put a secret room where they talked about the troubled development. I wonder if this sounds like the type of game where they would actually intentionally do that.
This is like mainline stuff that you're running into, where you'll read little documents about decisions that were kind of made, and it's like they're not outright saying it's about Lorelei and the laser eyes, but they're like it's a good game at like eliciting like, oh, this I think this is about this without being really in your face about it. Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool.
Hell yeah. Well, everybody should go check that out. Marcus, you've been playing a game that's been on my radar for a couple of years now. I first heard about it it wasn't at the event, but I heard it weirdly. I was like doing the outreach because I was going to be in Europe, and I was like, I'm going to Gamescom. This is back in 2022. And the devs kind of hit me up, but we weren't able to make a meetup happen or anything. But Paper Trail has been on my radar for a while. You've been playing it. How is it? And also, it might not be a game people are familiar with. Can you also say what it is?
Yeah, so I have not finished it, to be clear. But it's a game where you play. It's a puzzle game where you play as a young girl named Paige, which I'll let the sort of pun there.
Hold on, let me think about it.
Really think about that one for a second. Yeah.
And when you get that's when you'll have that 4.0.
Yeah. Okay. I'll keep thinking about it.
But yes, the protagonist Paige, the young girl who has the ability to bend reality to her whim by folding it like it's a piece of paper. And one thing that I like about the game is that like she openly acknowledges that it's really weird that she can do that. She's like, yeah, I don't know how I just found out one day I could do this thing, and that's not normal, but it's kind of cool too. And the whole story is that it's funny that we've been talking about grade school averages, because Paige's whole motivation is that she wants to move out to go to a university, but her parents won't let her, because her parents are like very sweet people, but they're very much sort of like afraid to let her leave the nest. They're like, oh, the world's scary, just stay here, just live with us, why do you want to move out and stuff. And she's like, no, she's like, I want to go to school and see the world and find myself. So she runs away. She's like, I'm gonna get out of here. So the story is just sort of taking her across these different environments as she's sort of just on this journey where she's meeting a bunch of like weird people and helping them out with their problems, all with the power of folding things like paper. So every level is kind of divided into like flat sheets, like you're moving around. It's got this very kind of I don't say simplistic, but almost kind of like a paper crafty look to everything. And what you're doing is that you're selecting the edges and the corners of every screen, and you can either like fold it horizontal or vertical, or you can pull it like diagonal. And on the back side of every level is like another image, and you're basically using that image to overlap with what's on the front to create paths. So you'll come across a broken bridge and you're like, how do I get past this bridge? And you'll fold the page vertically and you're like, oh, there's a piece of a bridge here. If I line this up right, Paige can walk across that. So that's like the simplest form of it. And at least what I've played so far, I'm in the middle of the third chapter right now. The game pretty much just builds on that, where eventually you get to the point where there's like paths that have these sort of like basically die symbols, and you can only cross them by lining up the respective die. So you'll see a block that's like, oh, this says a 3 die. Where's the other 3 die at? I have a 2 die here, but that's not going to work. And you're like, okay, I need to fold the 3 die, and then you have to line multiple paths together. And sometimes you got to fold the screen like 2 or 3 times to get where you need to be. Of like, okay, I have like the top folded down, I have one corner folded up, and then you're almost like, by the time like some paths, it just looks like you're walking across a little origami piece because of how many times you have to fold it to get the path that you need to create.
Yeah.
And then also there's like secrets that are hidden behind some pages. Like there's these collectible origami animals that each chapter has, and there's like a log telling you how many each stage has that you can seek out on your own if you want to. And those are usually harder to get your hands on. I've got to the point where they've introduced objects like rocks that you have to push to put on pressure plates. And then the rocks, like whatever like section of the paper the rocks is on, you can't fold it. And you can also only push it forward or back. So you can't really move around it. So like that limitation kind of dictates how you have to fold things to try to get around to where you need to push the rock that need to be. So it's just making it a little bit harder at every step of the way. Eventually, later on, you get the ability to see the backside of every page without having to flip it over, which is nice. So you can kind of plan in advance just by looking at it. But so far, it's pretty fun. I've noticed, though, that it's a game that I think I can only play in like short bursts. I don't think it's something I can sit down and play for like long stretches, just because of how much work goes into like folding and stuff to try to get through, because the game gets pretty elaborate relatively quickly.
Yeah, do you find you hit a wall with it?
There have been points where I always had to say like a wall. Like I feel like a wall is something I almost have to feel like I got to look up. Nothing's gotten that hard, but there have been times where I've like really had to like, I'm like flipping multiple times, like every possible angle, trying to figure out, okay, what if I did this? Okay, no, what if I did this? And what can trip you up is that almost like folding in real life, like you could have the right answer in terms of like you're folding the right part, but you didn't move it an inch forward enough to connect. And if you don't realize that, you might abandon it, and it might take you a while to circle back to trying that again, because you realize, no, if you had moved it up a little bit more, like you had it, but for whatever reason, maybe you didn't notice that maybe another part of the map that you folded was already kind of like brushing up against this. So you need to unfold that part first, then unfold the part that you had, or something like that. Like it seems like the margin for error there is relatively large, which is ultimately like on you.
Sure.
But I there were times where I was like, oh man, I thought that didn't work, and I tried it again, and then just adjusted it enough where it just like clicked into place basically. So it's something that you got to be mindful of, but I like the story, and also in between sort of like the basic navigation puzzles, there's like cutscenes that you have to interact with where you're full like Paige will do a narration, and then you have to fold the scene to a certain way to continue her narration, which are usually lighter, but it's sort of like fun little puzzles there. Like we saw in the NGT we had to do this kind of neat puzzle. We have to close her suitcase by folding the top part of the paper down to basically close her bag so that you can progress. I was like, oh, that's kind of, I like that. That's a nice little trick there. But yeah, I haven't seen anything new yet in terms of mechanics. So like, at least where I'm at so far, I have no idea how long the game is. I can't imagine it's that long just with the premise, but I'll probably keep picking at it. Like I said, it seems like a game I would do like maybe like half a world a night, you know, depending on how like tough it is. Because you get past one, you're like, man, that took a while. And then you get to the next one, you're like, am I ready to do this again? And they're like, even though it's enjoyable, like, man, that last one was rough. Took a lot to get through. Yeah. And like it gets challenging.
Okay. I there's a lot out right now, but I kind of, like I said, have this invested interest in it. Do you think, you said you can only kind of get through one half, like a half of a world a night. Can I ask like how long those sessions are that like you're able to kind of get through that? Like I'm just trying to like parse out like what it would take to get through this.
So it's always hard to say with puzzle games because it sort of depends on
how smart you are.
I wasn't gonna say that, but you know, some people solve things faster than other people.
Yeah. I'm just playing around.
But in terms of like the number of them and how large they are, like that first, like there's a prologue chapter that's kind of basically the tutorial, and then after that, the first real chapter was pretty lengthy. Okay. Like you're going through a cave, and there's like at least 2 different sections of the cave that each have like, I want to say like at least 4, 5 puzzles before you get to the second part of the cave, and then you do like another 4 or 5, and then you get out, and then you get to the area that I am now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that doesn't really answer your question in terms of length, but it probably took me like, because I did that whole one in like a sitting, probably took like an hour.
Okay. I mean, yeah, the benefit of like a lot of these non-AAA games coming out, a lot of them are shorter. You can get through like a fair amount of them versus, you know, playing. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't know how long Stellar Blade is, but I feel like you can get through a couple of these in the amount of time I can get through one of those larger games.
Oh, undoubtedly. Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
And I'm at a place right now where I'm really feeling like creatively inspired by a lot of the games that are out right now. Just so many ones. I mean, Animal Well is a pretty big one, but Paper Trail is just so different.
It's very unique. There's not much. I can't really. I mean, even Animal Well, you know, we've been using the term Metroid, but Paper Trail, I'm like, I can't think of anything.
The closest thing I can compare it to is I don't know if you guys. I reviewed this game. I don't know if you guys played it.
But can I guess?
Carto.
Oh no, Carto. Yeah. Okay, I was thinking that or like, the monster one, Monster's Journey or something. It came out on the same time.
One. Yeah. But Carto,
I can say that, you know, I have been playing some Paper Mario, and that has a lot of folding to solve puzzles, but in a much different way. Yeah.
Paper Trails is also on mobile via Netflix, which is where I'm planning to play it, and I'm hopefully going to replace my TikTok time with Paper Trails so that I get through it, as opposed to taking away Hades' time.
Honestly, I'm glad you brought that up, Wes, because I was going to mention that the game's also in mobile, and I would almost wonder if that's the best platform because of the touch controls really lends itself to like using your finger to just, you know, fold the pages, like just select the edge of the screen or the corners and just go back and forth. Because I'm playing on PS5 and it's fine, but like you have to like use the triggers to grip the page and then use the analog stick to pull it down, and it's just a little bit more work. Like it's fine, but it is more work, and it's like, like something about just picturing that on a touchscreen just sounds more intuitive and natural than like flipping a page in real life. So I would almost wonder if that's just the better platform to play it on, or on. I'm pretty sure the game's on Switch too. So it
works nice on mobile. I played it at Summer Game Fest last year, and that's how they chose to showcase it, was on phones. And it seemed like a natural fit. And I bet for puzzle solving, it's probably makes for a little bit less frustrating experience. Like, because even when I played it, I was at moments where I'm like, I just did not know what to do. So I'm just like, swipe here, swipe here, swipe here. And it was like a lot faster. And I bet because on PS5, you have to pull the trigger down and then
move the cursor.
Right? Yeah, that seems a lot more cumbersome.
The game on PC, at least mouse clicks probably would be quicker too.
Yeah. The game I was thinking of that is actually not like Paper Trail, but it has the same art style, very similar as Carto, is a Monsters Expedition, if anybody's played that. That's a fun puzzle game. You're kind of hopping from island to island and using logs to solve puzzles. But well, cool. So that was Paper Trail. Marcus, keep going. Tell us about Endless Ocean.
I was gonna say about Paper Trail real quick that it's out next week, not this week.
Okay, good to know.
May 21st.
Good to know.
But yes, Endless Ocean Luminous, a game that is already out and has been out since.
I haven't heard great things about this.
I haven't heard anything about it, but I've had a code for a little while. It's been hard to make time to play it, but I wanted to get to it so we could talk about it. So I played a first couple of hours of it last night. I have not. This is the third game in the Endless Ocean series. The first two games were Wii games, which I've never played either of them, but I was familiar with them.
Sure.
And it's basically like an open world like diving game where you're a scuba diver and they throw you in a big vast ocean and you can just go swim with marine life and you can scan them and read fun little facts about them. But there's also a story, at least in this game. I don't know if this is like new or something the series has always had, but there's like a main narrative, which at first I'm like, oh, cool. Like, I'm cool. I could get down with just freely exploring, but I'm a purpose-driven player. It's like, oh, give me some sort of like through line or hook or no pun intended, hook, to get me through this.
Yeah.
And the story from what I've seen so far is, I mean, I wasn't expecting like some sort of narrative masterpiece by any means, but it's kind of disappointing in just the sort of the way they gate it. Because the first chapter is just so it's like one chapter and then multiple sub chapters where it's all just very, very boring tutorial stuff where it's that very Nintendo style, like we're not just holding your hand, we are handcuffing you together
to it.
And you will not have fun until we've decided
you can't escape our clutches.
Until you prove that you're a big boy.
You can have fun. That's
You're just like, they're like, you go do one basic thing and then you're done, but it's going to take forever because there's a bunch of dialogue because you have an AI named Sarah who is just a smidgen above text to speech in terms of personality. And then the only other character I've met is this idiot named David, or I think it's Daniel, it's really weird because he's like, I guess you're like your rival / friend. But like he has like full speech, but his emotes are just like, it sounds like his oxygen tank broke and he's like drowning in front of you because he's just like it's like this very violent, unpleasant sounding like gurgling that is just like, but then the text is just like, hey, you're really good at this, I guess. And you're just like, it sounds like you're dying, sir. Are you okay? I was like, that's a weird choice for like, I don't know, just the sound of his emote.
I mean, it's supposed to, its whole pitch is like, we are Endless Ocean. We are a very pleasant, relaxing game, right? So to have a character that's like blubbering at you with some frequency, it seems against its whole idea, right?
Yeah, like I was like, I like playing a lot of Pikmin 4. It's like, man, probably should have stolen one of those little grunts that all the little astronauts have that sound like way cuter. But so after you get past the tutorial stuff, you're like, all right, chapter 2, I guess this is when we do the real stuff. Because it ends with you finding an artifact from like a lost civilization. And that's pretty much what is your goal, is that it's got this checkerboard pattern. And then it's like, oh, there's 99 squares. You got to light up all 99 of these squares with like discoveries. And you're like, okay, I can get down with that, filling this out. And then I start up chapter 2 and it's locked. I'm like, wait, why can't I start it? And then you see there's a little objective task that's like, you need to scan fish 500 times before you can play chapter 2. And I'm just like, wait, what? like where do I do that? Because like in the tutorial, there's like throw in the ocean, but you're very much like, you know, again, handcuffed. You can't go anywhere. And so you have to back out of the story mode because there's 2 other modes in this game where there's solo dive and then there's like co-op dive. It's like basically multiplayer. You can go in and hang out with other people, which I have not tried yet. So I go into solo dive, and then that's a whole other mode. It basically is just like free dive. Like we're just going to drop in the ocean. You can do what you want, which is great because that's what I want to do. But it's weird that it's in another mode.
Yeah.
And not just in the story mode. And also 500 fish for chapter 2 is a lot because it takes a long time that's a lot of fish to find. And it in a way, the game does accommodate that because they throw you in the ocean. I'm like diving around, and I was taken aback by the sheer density of fish that are around you at all times. And not just in the sense of like, yes, the ocean is obviously abundant with life, but it's like rare fish. Like within like a minute, I ran into 3 different species of whales that were all just like hanging out in a way that just does not work in real life. Of like, there is a humpback whale, and then right behind it is a sperm whale, and then over there is a blue whale, the largest animal in existence, and like they don't even occupy the same depths usually or climates. And like, you know how rare they are, and like, no, they're just here. And then like you can dive, and this is a video gamey thing, but it's like a nature nerd. It's just like, this is weird, where you can dive for like a few seconds and you're already in like the deep ocean where you're finding like anglerfish and colossal squid and stuff. Like all those, like the ones that are like in the pitch black scary part of the ocean are just like a second away from diving. And usually, like, again, no human could dive that far because you would die immediately because of the water pressure. But you're just like, I don't know, maybe he just has a good suit on. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
I don't know. You want to see those fish, though, right?
I mean, you do want to see them. Like, I get it. But it's just like, I played a bit of it while I was there. And at first, I'm like, oh, it's cool. Like, you know, discovery. Wow, I'm scanning all these fish. You know, there's some that I've never seen before, and they all come with like a narrated little audio log about like, here's a little fun fact about them. When you read, I'm like listening to all of them. But then it starts to become like too much of a good thing, in a sense that I like I mentioned before about like, there's way too many whales here. Like it feels like there's just too much rare stuff to where like it takes away the sense of discovery because you really don't have to try. Like you just turn around and there's something like huge right there. And they're like, oh, that kind of robs, like, I just want to actually explore and kind of almost be left alone a little bit before I run into something big, because then it feels like you found something. But it almost feels like when you're a kid and you eat like a chocolate chip cookie, and you tell yourself like, this cookie would be better if there was like double the chocolate chips or triple. And then you make that and you eat it and you go like, actually, maybe there's a reason why it's balanced the way it was. Because you're like, oh, maybe this is too many chocolate chips. It's like that. We're like, okay, like this, there's too many fish nearby. This is gonna be the weirdest complaint. I can see people already saying now this is gonna sound like the puddles aren't wet enough.
Yeah, right.
But
like,
no,
who complains about a double chocolate chip cookie? But I see what you're getting at, right?
Well, I love Subnautica. I don't know if you guys have played Subnautica.
Oh, I love Subnautica. Yeah.
And I think those games do the open ocean better because you're always seeing stuff, but you have to really look to find different species because they all have their own biomes. And then the rare stuff you really have to look for. Like there's a sense of discovery in that game that the game does really well, where like it never feels like the ocean is lifeless, but it also doesn't feel like we cramped everything within like a foot of you. Yeah. And that's what Endless Ocean feels like it is now. And I've only explored 5% of the ocean. And I know that because the game tells you as you map it out. And I'm like, this is it. Like what else is out there? If this is all like here within the first like 2 seconds, I've already ran into like some of the rarest whales you'll ever see. So, like, unless like the Kraken is in here somewhere. I mean, maybe he is, who knows? And it doesn't, because of that, I'm like, I'm less enthused to explore. And also means you're scanning every 2 seconds because you're constantly finding stuff. So you're like, oh, I kind of want a moment to sort of take it in and like actually earn it a little bit instead of you throwing it at me. And now knowing that I have to do this 500 times just to get to chapter 2. Yeah, and I know there's at least 5 chapters. I don't know how many there are ultimately, but I know there's at least 5 just looking at the end game achievements. So I'm like, how many more? How else are they going to gate me if they put this really big wall up so early? Just to start the real stories. I've only done the tutorial stuff, you know? So I just think it's just sort of like bottlenecked in a way that I'm not really feeling. So I don't know how much more I'll play of it, honestly. I might dip back in and see what else I run into and scan. But even then, I was like, this isn't. I was trying to treat it almost like a podcast game, like maybe it'll be mindless in that way. But it's like, no, because I would like to again enjoy the immersion of like I'm swimming around, having a good time with the fish. But it's like there's too many of you guys, and I'm not really. There's like no effort involved. You know, it's like they're all just here. It's like it's oops all berries, but if it was bad, you know.
If it was oops all berries, but if it was bad. There's a box of the bag of box quote for you.
Oops all berries, objectively the best Captain Crunch cereal.
I can all agree. I don't know about that. It's not Captain
likes
Crunch.
The yellow
berries.
Who likes the yellow part?
That's just a different. My problem with oops all berries is it's a different cereal. At that point,
no, it took the best part of Captain Crunch and said, "What if we just did that?"
I mean, Marcus, you're getting back to your too many chocolate chips. You gotta have some.
All berries. It's competing against like other cereals. It's in like the Lucky Charms realm of cereal when it's got the yellow pieces. Once it's all berries, now you're up against Trix and Fruity Pebbles and all fruit cereals. And I don't know if it competes with those.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
I mean, no. You pretend those don't exist though. You've already committed to your purchase. You know, you chose oops all berries. You know.
Well, that sounds like a game that is very troubled, but
yeah. But you're saying it wasn't doing well because I haven't looked at the reception.
No,
I've seen.
Yeah. Do you want to guess the IGN review score?
That's the one I saw. That's the one I saw.
All right, I'm gonna say. Do we know who wrote it? Is anyone we know?
Let me see.
Was it Mitchell Saltzman or no?
No, I think it was Logan Plant, maybe.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with Logan. I'm gonna see if it's someone that I know personally that I can kind of guess what they would
Logan
give.
Plant, yes, over at IGN.
Yeah, he's he does their Nintendo show.
And I'm looking at it. His headline is like a box of oops all berries, but bad. Is what he wrote.
You had me for a second. I was like, did he? I'm gonna say a 3.
Close. He gave it a 4. 4 out of 10 from Logan Plant over at IGN. So which is not a good score. That's bad, according to IGN's template.
Yeah.
So walk, don't run.
Yeah.
Too endless.
Don't swim.
Don't
yeah.
jump in the water.
Stay on land.
Well, on a more positive note, let's jump into With My Past. And I know, Wes, you and Kyle have both been playing this game. We were going to talk about it last week. The show was a bit too busy for that. But I would love for you to have a chance to spotlight it this week, Wes.
Yeah, so the day before it came out, the developer, it might be a solo developer. It's definitely their debut game. They sent me a bunch of codes for this, and I had the spare like 20 minutes to put it into Steam and download it and give it a go. And then I ended up just playing it all in one sitting, which is pretty big deal for me because it's not a 2-hour game. It's like a 5-hour game, and I was locked in the entire time. If you're a developer listening to this, that doesn't usually work. If you send me a code the day before your game comes out, it is very slim chances I will get to play it, let alone write a review for release day.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess if you've got a banger on your hands, try your hand, and I'll see. Make sure you put in the subject line like, Wesley, this is a banger. And then maybe I'll give it a go.
Wesley, everybody thinks their game is a banger.
But yeah, so it is the closest comparison I can make, and I don't know if it's inspired by, but it certainly feels like it is like Celeste, in that it is a narrative driven, I should say, platformer puzzle type game. I think Celeste is much more of a platformer than this is, whereas this is more of a puzzle type game. But I mentioned Celeste. I would
sprinkle a little Braid in there too, Wes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and the reason why I point to Celeste and Braid as well is that it does a big part of its narrative is put into the mechanics. It's not a puzzle game where there's a story going on. It's a puzzle game where the puzzles and the mechanics that you're interacting with are a part of the narrative journey this character, who is an unnamed blue-haired protagonist, is going on. So you wake up at 3 a.m. and your character is clearly dealing with like I don't want to say a traumatic past, but her past keeps her up at night, literally. And you're kind of diving in through this labyrinth of puzzles that is her mind to reckon and wrestle with the past and what it means to her and how it affects her. it's a lot more vague than Celeste. Celeste is like very clearly has a story to tell about Madeline.
Madeline.
Yeah. About acceptance and like self-love and all that. This game has similar themes, but it's way more vague, and I actually think I appreciated it a lot because of that. Because I was able to kind of like infuse my own struggles with my past, or like embarrassing moments in life, or things I wish I could take back, that kind of stuff into this game. So she's struggling with her past, and that's where the game's mechanics start, is where whatever you do in the game, 2 seconds later, your past does. And it's like a little bit transparent version of yourself on screen that does exactly what you just did, but 2 seconds later.
Okay.
So if you walk 2 seconds to the right, 2 seconds later, you will see another you walk 2 seconds to the right. And it turns into this really brain bending, unique. I haven't messed with puzzles like this before in any game, where you have to like use your past to solve the puzzle, knowing that your past is going to do what you did 2 seconds later.
It reminds me of that Lisfanga game I was talking about earlier this year a bit. That's an action game. That was it. But yeah,
it is similar to that. That was at SGF last year, right?
Yeah.
I remember seeing it. Yeah. And it starts simple and then continues to get harder and harder and more complex, but you get new mechanics based on where this unnamed protagonist is with her past. So, you know, at first she just wants to run away from it, and that's why she's constantly trying to get away, and why her past continues to follow her 2 seconds later, because you can't run away from your past. And then once she starts to realize, like, oh, okay, you know what, my past is part of me, I can't escape it, you get a mechanic where you can like hold a trigger and it solidifies your past for a couple seconds. So you could stand on top of your past silhouette to get to new heights and stuff.
Okay.
And then as she reckons and develops more with her past, and it finds new places and meanings for her in her life, the mechanics continue to build off of that. I won't spoil it because it's a 5-hour game, and that would be spoiling the main brunt of the game. But it's a story of like accepting your past and coming to terms with it and recognizing that you can't erase it. So there's no sense in running from it. And it just really resonated with me. Like, I think everyone can resonate with like your past, whether it's, you know, you're walking around and then you remember that embarrassing thing that happened in like 7th grade and you're like, oh my God, I wish I could forget about this. Or something like a bad breakup, or something you did to someone that you wish you didn't. Like anything like that. The game is vague enough where you can kind of transpose your issues with your past onto this. And for me, it was like my tagline for the review is puzzle therapy, because it was like a therapeutic little 5-hour puzzle session where I'm watching this character come to grips with her past and what it means to her and how it plays a role in her life, and kind of, you know, finding new things about my own past in similar ways. And then on top of that, unique puzzles that I've not messed with before in a game or seen in a game, it just continued to be engaging. There's like 150 across the entire game, 6 chapters.
Okay.
And there was only a few where I was really frustrated and like bashing my head against the wall, which you can actually just straight up skip a puzzle if you want to give up, or you can skip every single puzzle in the game like subsequently. So even if you're interested in the story and you don't care to do the puzzles anymore, they're not jiving with you, you can do that. But I only skipped a few puzzles because I'd spent like 10-15 minutes. I clearly was not getting what they were going for, and I was ready to move on because I wanted to see what was next.
Yeah.
Is there's no penalty for skipping or anything?
No, I mean, I was on Steam, maybe like on other actually this is only a Steam game. I was still getting achievements, so it doesn't like lock out achievements. There's nothing else happening in the game. There's no XP, there are no items to collect, there's no anything. So it's just solving puzzles and seeing where that takes the narrative. But yeah, it's very much I described it in my review as like the kind of game that'll leave you with a smile on your face, in like a hurts so good type of smile. I think we've talked about La La Land before. I know me and Kyle have, possibly on the podcast or maybe off, but like the ending of La La Land is like a hurts so good type of smile, where it's heartbreaking, but it's uplifting. It's a bunch of emotions, and you're just like, I'm really glad I experienced that. And that's kind of how I felt about this game. It's just like a good reminder of what developers can do to mix and like completely intertwine narrative and gameplay. Like it's and what like ludonarrative dissonance is like a fun word and something sometimes people make fun of in games. But like the opposite of that is when a developer like ensures that every aspect of its mechanical gameplay is a part of the story.
Ludonarrative harmony.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
a great harmony.
To me is like there'll be moments where like narrative as design, where it's like, for example, like there's a platform over on the right side of the screen, and like you are on a very slow moving platform that's like moving towards that, and you can't do anything, right? Like you just have to wait, and then the text on screen will just be like her talking about how she feels like she doesn't have any control, you know?
Yeah.
And in that moment, from a design perspective, that is absolutely what's going on. You do not have control of the situation. You're just waiting for things to get better. And it's like, and it does that a lot. Like it does that throughout the whole game in really smart little subtle ways that I appreciate.
That is cool. I like that.
Yeah, I gave it, I don't know if I mentioned my score. I gave it a 9 out of 10. It is 100%. This is it came out 2 days before May 9th, which is the busy indie day.
Yeah,
it's definitely getting overshadowed. I still think I'm the only coverage out there that I can find. There's a preview from a couple months ago, but like my review is the only launch day coverage. If you're listening to this and you like puzzle games, like go give this game a try on PC. It's short, it's sweet. It's not getting the attention and love that I wish it was getting. So maybe this is like a don't send codes the day before your game comes out warning, even if your game is good. But like, yeah, this is one of the indie extravaganza. It's my favorite of the ones I've played, which I still have others to play, like Animal Well and a bunch of others. But between the ones I have touched, this is the one that I'm going to be, I know the rest of the year I'm going to be like, did you play with my past? Have you played with my past? Because it's just, it's getting overshadowed, which is fine. It happens. But like, you're hearing it here. Go play this game. It's good.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it. I have it installed. I'm going to start it in the near future, so you won't have to heckle me to play it.
Chastise you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, awesome. Couple other games to talk about here. One last week, one that I'm very curious to hear about, Marcus, is Indika, the nun game. It's a nun game.
That's what's called Indika : the
nun game. Yeah, it's a very it's got a very striking key image, and I don't know if it's a horror game or a comedy or something in between, but I'm intrigued. Tell me about it.
That's the fun thing about Indika, is that it's a little bit of both, as well as some other stuff. We did an NGT of this game when I was still playing it. I've since finished it. If you can read my review now on the site, I gave it an 8.75, just shy of a 9, because I really love this game. It is such a bizarre game, but like in a really good and like thoughtful way.
Yeah,
where it's set in like early, I want to say like 20th century Russia, and you play as this young nun named Indika, who is sort of like an outcast at her monastery. Like all the other nuns there just treat her like dirt, and she's clinging onto her faith, and you find out over time that she maybe didn't get a say when it came to living in a monastery. Like she had a life before that, but then you find out what happened to kind of get her there. But she is very devout, but the problem is that she has the devil in her head for some reason. Like the voice of the devil is constantly talking to her, and like
is that unsettling?
I mean, I don't think so. I guess it depends who you are. It's not like a scary voice. It's kind of more like a
every day for Marcus. This is like normal for him, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I could check with him and see. Is it creepy to hear from you?
Did you play Hellblade and you're like, yeah, this is the normal experience?
Yeah, why is everybody?
I mean, honestly, it's less disturbing than Hellblade. Like it's not going for that kind of like Indika isn't tortured by this in the same way that Senua is with her psychosis. Like what's interesting is that the game, it kind of establishes that this is something that she's been dealing with for a while, because she's not surprised to hear him. Like she's very casual with him and will be like, oh, shut up, or will like argue with him, and they'll have like philosophical debates about the nature of sin. Because, he'll try to be like, oh, why do you even follow this? It doesn't make any sense. It contradicts this, this, and this. And, oh, you say you believe in this, but what about this example that you're saying, So they get in those kind of like back and forths. But from a gameplay end, because the game is a third-person adventure game, very probably the closest comparison I've heard people compare it to was like a Plague Tale, just in terms of its design, where it's not a combat game at all. You're just sort of moving around these different environments, and you're just solving environmental puzzles alongside another character that you meet relatively early on, named Ilya, who's this like escaped prisoner who's sort of just through shenanigans. Him and Indika kind of decide to travel together because they both have like similar but like separate goals of like, we're trying to find salvation for our own sort of like problems. Like he's got like a wounded arm that he thinks is the result or like a sign of God, that like only God can fix it. And then there's like discussions that they have between the two of them about like, well, what's the validity of that and whatnot. But the devil from a gameplay sense comes into play where there's moments where his influence kind of overwhelms Indika, and it warps the world into this like hellish version of itself where it like literally like tears itself apart, and it kind of creates these platforming challenges or these navigational challenges where like, okay, the path just like broke in half because the devil's like in full on like taunting mode, like he's talking a bunch of mess right now, and the only way to subdue him is like there's a pray button, so like you hold down
press R1 right to
trigger.
Pray.
Actually left trigger in this case, LT to pray. And then when you pray, it'll like shut him out, and then the world returns to normal. So you're literally just kind of like going back and forth, changing the world state to navigate a like an innavigable, like basically a navigation puzzle. Like, hey, I don't know how to get over here. Yeah. Maybe I'll switch back and forth between.
Is it like the medium in that way? Like you're going between two realms to advance through puzzles, or are those like narrative heavy moments?
It's narrative heavy. Like it's not like the medium. Okay. It's a lot more in world. It reminds me more of like DMC Devil May Cry. Speaking of Ninja Theory, when the world would attack you suddenly, and you would see it kind of change in real time as you're running around. Like it's a little closer to that. Not nearly as like extreme or impressive, but like similar. But they don't occur very often. It's only like maybe 3 times this happens in the game, because it's not a long game. It's probably get through it in like 5 hours. But the weirdness of the game is just there's so much weird stuff on the edges. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen screenshots or videos, but there's like pixel art in this game. Like in the corner of the screen, you're collecting points by finding like religious artifacts, and they manifest in the world as like literal floating pixel coins that are just completely at odds with the other like otherwise realistic art direction. And then when you pick them up, it makes like little chiptune jingles and stuff like that.
So strange.
And then there's a skill tree that is really like a skill twig, because it's like 2 branches, and you're leveling Indika up. And then every upgrade that you're unlocking is named after like, oh, this one is repentance and this one is guilt. And they're all just like various point modifiers. But then the game tells you very early on, it's like, hey, just so you know, don't worry about collecting points. They're pointless. And you're like, wait, what? Then but they're here. And you're like, what's that all about? Yeah. And you still go out of your way to do it. You're like, I don't know. Okay, what does that mean exactly? And there's faith. I mean, maybe. I think there's so many interesting sort of like meta commentaries about religion, because like at the core of the game is sort of Indika struggling to remain faithful when she's in this world that is very harsh, and you see throughout the story just like she gets screwed over in ways where you feel bad for her. And I think she's a very interesting character. She's one of my favorite characters of the year so far, just sort of seeing her journey of self-discovery, and when you learn about like what happened in her past that kind of landed her at the monastery in the first place, and then seeing the relationship between her and Ilya sort of evolve over time. But then for every like emotional moment, there's some just weirdness of absurdity where like, I think in the Ninja T-Call, I almost compared it to like Deadly Premonition, where it's like it's all the characters just off in a weird way. The soundtrack is weird. It's just a weird, quirky soundtrack that, again, you wouldn't think to hear it in the game when you just look at screenshots. And then even the opening cutscene is so wild. It's like on my list of moments of the year. I don't want to spoil it, but like there's a cinematic that is just so bizarre and delightful in just such a weird way. And I believe the developer, Odd Meter, even describes the game as kind of a black comedy. And it certainly feels like that at points where it's like, yes, this is serious, but it's framed in a really kind of like absurdist way that is kind of funny. But it doesn't like dampen the impact of it either.
Okay.
And a lot of the game feels like, I know it's an indie game, but even more than like most indie games, like there was like an artistic touch to it that reminds me of like a really good independent film, like just with the weird camera angles that they choose. And again, even the opening cutscene, like there's an opening credit sequence after that cutscene I just described, that it's framed in such an interesting way where you're like navigating, but then they're displaying the credits of the game. You'd have to see it for me because I don't want to not do it justice by describing it.
Yeah.
But it was like, I don't know if I've ever seen credits framed this way before. Just the way they shot that's really cool. Like there's a very deliberate sort of like artistic touch to everything they do in this game that you always look at and go like, I don't know if I've seen that. And even if it doesn't always make sense, or it's just like, that's an odd choice, you're like, I kind of like that they did this. Like it's just bold. Like you don't really see things framed this way, or like the way that they're telling the story. And I haven't even mentioned the like flashback sequences that play out like 16-bit, like it's just a straight up 16-bit video game where like the entire presentation changes, like, oh, now we're playing like a top-down mini platformer and everything's in like retro 16-bit graphics. And you're like, why is this happening? And I have my own
church once.
Yeah. Oh, that's when you snuck in your Game Boy and you were trying to make sure your parents didn't see it.
Pokemon Emerald in the pews.
Yeah. But I mean, it's funny I say that, but like there is a little bit of that. Imagine if you brought your Game Boy Advance to church and you mashed those two weird, disparate things together, and maybe Indika's got a little bit of that vibe just because of the weird mishmash of just like artistic elements and just the way it shoots things. But at its root, I think the story is really, really interesting, and the ending I'm still thinking about, because it ends on a really powerful but like kind of vague note that's kind of meant to be like, interpret this however you want, that kind of thing, but also without feeling like inconclusive or unsatisfying, at least to me. But it's definitely one that I think it's one of the most interesting and imaginative games of the year, and one of the most thoughtful, just from like the writing, the presentation, like everything. It's a wild game.
Cool. I really want to play it. I have a queue now of games, right, of indie games that are all apparently about 5 hours long, but like I this one's on the list. I really want to play this one.
Yeah, same. I literally just messaged Brian asking if we have any extra codes.
Yeah, this is another one I want to do a spoiled for. I think I would love to see how everyone sort of interprets what they see in that game.
Does it feel like specifically because it's like Russian Orthodox Catholicism, right, or something? Like it's very much Catholicism, right?
I'm not it's Catholicism. I don't know all the different flavors of it.
I just wonder, like, as someone who grew up in like a Baptist church and has kind of wrestled with that as part of my past, and like I don't really go to church or do anything like that anymore, but I grew up in church. I'm curious like how this game hits for, like, is it speaking to Catholicism, which is a very different branch of Christianity, or if it's gonna like hit
the Protestant,
like all of Christianity.
I don't know if it's I think it's less of a commentary about the specific structure of Catholicism itself and more so the nature of faith. Like there's a very interesting discussion. Probably the biggest takeaway I had from this, or thing that stuck with me, was there's a discussion in the game about like the nature of free will, because they talk about like, oh, God created man with free will, but at the same time, if you don't believe in him or you don't love him, you go to a bad place. So what choice is that even a choice then? Like, how can you choose to love someone that is also telling you, if you don't believe in me, you're going to go to a bad place? So what is choice then?
Questions you don't ask in church, Marcus.
Yeah. Almost like none of this makes sense.
And the game, I think, plays with those with that maybe core theme a lot of like, like what is true love if you're kind of being almost your arms being twisted into loving something, or at least that's what it seems like it being. Maybe we're interpreting it wrong, or maybe the church is presenting it in a wrong way. Who knows? You know,
church has never been wrong in history.
Interesting.
That's not a
historically correct organization. Generally, most churches, yes.
Organized. Don't look at like the 1500s.
Man, I used to work at a church before I started podcasting. Isn't that wild?
I know. I learned that recently.
I know.
You're going to heaven. You've punched your ticket.
Well, I don't know. I guess, yeah, theoretically, I no longer subscribe to that. But yeah, interesting piece of Alex lore there. But yeah, I'm deeply curious about how this game would affect me. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because what makes it even more interesting is that it's the devil that raises these questions. So you're almost like,
confronted
should
by
I be listening to you, even though that's a good point? But is it bad that that's a good point?
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Like, am I falling for? Because the devil's supposed to be the ultimate seducer.
Yeah.
So again, you're like, what is the nature of sin? And you know, again, it's play the game, I guess. This is a whole rabbit hole you can go down here.
Yeah, that's super cool. Well, cool. Before we wrap up, Kyle, do you want to talk to us about another game of devils that seduce people in space? Maybe I don't know anything about this. It's Killer Klowns from Outer Space.
Yeah, I played a couple matches with the developers recently, and I did get a sense of like sort of a criticism of Catholicism, sort of as an undercurrent of being chased by clowns. No, I'm just kidding. If that wasn't clear.
Yeah, St. Peter's one of the clowns.
That's right. Yeah. I played a couple rounds with a big group of the developers, and I'm actually not familiar with Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Like, do you guys know this movie? Have you watched it?
I've never seen it, but I've seen clips of it. I've always wanted to see it because I know it's like a cult favorite, but I used to see it at Blockbuster a lot.
And my understanding is it's like a horror comedy, right? It's just like ridiculous. It doesn't take itself seriously at all. It's about aliens that look like clowns, like kidnapping humans with cotton candy.
Yeah, it's these clowns that come down from space and they start killing people.
Okay.
Dang.
As you do.
That's what the box says. That's the summary on the back. But yeah, I mean, it's an asymmetrical multiplayer game from the folks that did like Predator Hunting Grounds and the recent asymmetrical Ghostbusters game. Like this has become like a genre that they're really proficient at. And like, I don't really have a background. I'm not part of the cult classic. You know, I don't really know the movie, but I had a pretty fun time, even if it wasn't like a spectacular, right? It was kind of like, oh, this all seems to be working well. There's like 5 clowns and 7 humans, and we were in like an amusement park, and humans had like a couple of different options for exits where they had to collect a couple things. Like, you got to get a key card to open this gate, but an alarm will go off once you open it, so you got to make sure there aren't any clowns nearby, and then you can escape through the gate. And it was all solid, you know. Like, I had a decent time. And the one thing that I wanted to talk about, like, that really stuck out to me, that I was like, oh, this is a smart idea that I like quite a bit, is like, you're really weighted towards the humans, right? There's a lot more humans than clowns. And since there's multiple exits, like, different groups can be working on different exits at different times. So like, if you're just like happen to be on the southeast side of the map and the clowns are kind of congregating in the north, and like you and 2 other people happen to get out early, like, they have some mechanics to make sure that you're still involved, which is like, it's a very simple thing, but it's something I was like, ooh, this is smart, and this is something that I hope other games recognize, because like, I got out early in like my first match, mainly because I was with the devs, and they're like, all right, hey, follow us, we're gonna show you how this works, and I was like, great, you guys seem to know what you're doing. and then what happens is, like, I got out, and then I was just sort of watching the rest of the match play out, but there was like a series of mini games that would kind of like, you know, change every time I finished one. And if I was successful at the mini game, it was like timed button pressing and stuff like that. It would send like reinforcements to the humans. So like, I was still helping them, and I was still engaged, and I wasn't just waiting. Like, I was actually doing things to help the other people do better, and like, you know, still like help out, right? I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but it was a nice, I wouldn't say simple is not the right term, because nothing is simple in video game development, but it was like a simple touch that I was like, this is cool. I like the idea that if I just am successful and I get out, I can still be involved and help the humans. And that was like it's a weird thing to call out as my big takeaway from Killer Klowns from Outer Space, but it was like the unique element that I was like, okay, this is cool. Like that's just like shows the sort of thinking about the experience of the player in a way that hopefully will translate to the larger experience and deliver something interesting. But it is one of those things where it's like, if you're not like a fan of the movie necessarily, like if you're not excited to see this like world come to life in like a interactive video game medium, nothing outside of that element really spoke to me as being like, this is gonna appeal to people outside of the film fandom. I don't know if that's there yet, but I don't know. It all ran well, and there were interesting mechanics. It was certainly not one of those things where I was like, this is bad. I wasn't necessarily blown away,
Yeah. I mean, did they say, like, do you need to watch the movie to understand this? Does it matter? Because I only say that because the Ghostbusters game they made, that is a sequel to Afterlife. Like, they were clear, like, this takes place after the Afterlife film. That's why Winston is hanging out at the station and is like your boss, because if you had seen how that film ends, you go like, oh, that's why Winston's around. I
don't think it's anything like that. I think it's just the thing is, like, you might be confused about the visual iconography of things. Like, you have to like wrap people up in like cotton candy to like, kidnap them and steal them away.
Yes, the strongest material.
I guess that's from the movie, right? Like, that's the extent of it, where it's like, I think it would help you there. But in terms of the plot, I don't think you're missing out on anything with Killer Klowns from Outer Space. One question I asked them that they didn't have a great answer for, but they did laugh at it, and we're like, oh, maybe. It was like, is it possible that the budget of this video game is larger than the budget of that like original film, at this point? And they're just kind of like, it could be, honestly, because I'm sure that film was made for like basically nothing back in the mid 80s or whenever it came out.
Yeah, so like, you realize you could have just shot another film instead of making this game? Is that what you were getting to?
Yeah, no, I don't know. That's not what I was getting at.
I know.
But Killer Klowns from Outer Space. I for fans of the film, I think there might be a fun asymmetrical multiplayer game here, and we'll see if anyone else grabs onto it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What horror franchises haven't made it to an asymmetrical experience yet? Because they've done Predator, we've done Friday the 13th, got this.
Chainsaw Massacre.
I mean, there's like Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Like Scream. Like any slasher could basically.
I mean, a lot of those are.
He just owns the slasher genre basically.
Yeah.
Give me a spooky one. Give me like a Conjuring. I don't know.
That's creepy.
And whoever's the ghost is invisible, because you don't really see the demons often in those movies, so it's just a chair flying across the room. And then...
What about like Drag Me to Hell, where you're just like outrunning just an invisible, like calamity, or I guess Final Destination could be that too. Is like you're just trying to not die.
Give me It Follows as an asymmetrical game.
Yeah, it's already got the soundtrack squared away.
That's funny. Well, we've reached the end of the show here, fellas.
Did it.
But it was a gauntlet, let me tell you. Just like that, just like my favorite moment in Animal Well.
Oh, is this what you were talking about in Animal Well?
Yeah, you actually have to sit through a podcast. Yes, yes, that's what I was talking about. There's telephones in the game. You'll also eventually stumble on a Discord call where you get to, have fun with your friends.
Scary wiener dog podcasting.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Of course, go follow these lovely gentlemen here on social media. You can follow Kyle at Kyle M. Hilliard. Follow Marcus at Marcus Stewart 7. Wes is at LeBlanc Wes, and you can follow me at It's Van Aken. Don't forget GameInformer.com/magazine or subscribe.GameInformer.com. Go get a print issue a print magazine subscription that really helps us out. Stay tuned. We got a lot of Hades videos going up.
Digital issue now live.
Yep. Go check out the Supergiant Games office tour. We put that up earlier this week. That was a lot of fun and gives you an inside look at where the Hades 2 magic is made. But until next time, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday. Bye.